Second, that which has given birth to us all being here together today. Technology, specifically technology that can help attorneys deliver their best work. Certainly, it's had its challenges over the past nearly 2 years with lots of changes, lots of pivots in the workplace. So if you're like me, I'm sure you've said thank you to technology many, many times in your head for coming to our rescue as things just abruptly changed on us. Our panel up next will shed light on technology matters relating to returning to the workplace, management of infrastructure and systems, tech adoption, tech innovation, and the use of artificial intelligence. Definitely just relevant for each and every one of us. So I'm sure you're just as eager as I am to hear what the panel has in store for us today. So let's watch together.
Hello, everyone. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I tried to coach myself not to behave like fangirl because I am totally fangirl of every single one of you. I want to welcome our audience here today for an incredibly essential conversation. We have things to review over what we've all just gone through with empowering our lawyers through technology during some really critical crisis moments. But this essential conversation is going to take us into where we're going, where we're heading, what our strategies are for infrastructure, software management, empowering the lawyers, innovating. And again, I am so privileged to introduce to you this panel. First of all, I am Sherry Capel. I am an evangelist here at Litera. I've had the honor of working with each and every one of your firms and your affiliations, to use Seth's word from this morning. And so I'm going to go ahead and toss this to Tracy. You're in my upper left. So why don't you go ahead and let us know your firm, your role, actually your roles, in fact, and where you're broadcasting to us from.
Hi, Sherry. Hi, everybody. I am broadcasting from Chicago. I am Tracy Elmblad. I'm the Chief Information and Operations Officer at Hinshaw and Culbertson. We are a law firm of about 400 lawyers and 22 offices in the U.S. mainly.
Wonderful. And Sandee, how about you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sandee Kastrul. I'm the president and co-founder of icStars, and I'm coming to you from Chicago.
Okay. Ginevra, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Ginevra Saylor. I'm the head of Innovation and Knowledge Programs at Gowling WLG. We're a global firm with offices all over. I am broadcasting from Toronto, Ontario in Canada. And I have a dual role, I guess, because I'm also president of the board of ILTA, the International Legal Technology Association.
Thank you. Britton, you're next.
Sure. Hi, I'm Britton Choi. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Shephard Mullin. I've been lucky to start the first half of my career as the Chief Security Officer for Shephard Mullin and now moved into a technology role for the second half of my decade plus here at Shephard Mullin as the CIO. And I'm broadcasting from Los Angeles, although I think my lighting doesn't show the sunshine that's coming through the windows properly. So I'm trying to move my curtains properly. Thanks.
Thank you, Britton. Leigh, you're next.
And I've got the sunshine for you, Britton, but I am in Ohio. I am Leigh Snider. I'm a legal process engineer manager with BakerHostetler, which is based out of Cleveland. I'm actually coming to you from Cincinnati, Ohio today.
Thank you. Doug, you are next.
Hi, I'm Doug Caddell. I'm the global CIO for Mayer Brown. We're one of the larger global firms. I work in Chicago, where I've commuted to for 19 out of 22 years, but never lived there on Saturday and Sunday. And I'm coming to you today from the original home of Microsoft, where Paul Allen and that other gentleman, Bill Gates, first founded Microsoft in 1975 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is where I am today.
history lesson too. So, Matt, you are last but not least.
Sure. Yeah, I'm actually coming to you from down the road from Leigh. I'm in Dayton, Ohio, and I am currently Chief Information Officer at Thompson Hine. Tracy, like your firm, about 400 lawyers. We have 8 offices, Ohio, East Coast, Atlanta, Chicago as well. And I've had stints with all sides of the legal profession, including software providers and consultancies, LexisNexis and HBR, and was previously at WilmerHale as well. I give you all that only because I'm relatively new to Thompson Hine. I've been here about 6 months.
Wonderful. So there are a couple of things I want to share with our audience today. First of all, as you can tell, we have an esteemed panel, and we are here to talk about a very big topic. So we brought all of the brains together to have that conversation from beginning to, well, to the, wraparound of the circle. And this conversation is about empowering lawyers with technology. And so the way we're going to move through this conversation is to take a small play from our title of the Changing Lawyer publication. We're going to move through this conversation, starting with the changing tech. Then we're going to start talking about the changing workspace, because obviously when the workspace and the work changes, our tech has to fit. And then from there, we're going to start talking about the changing tools, new tools of the trade. And we're going to wrap up with being able to then go ahead and work with the lawyers to the changing lawyer, the changing and tech empowered lawyer. That's going to kind of wrap up our conversation. Now, the cool thing is I was told by our backstage folks that we get to accept questions from the audience, and they're going to write them in the chat, and then they're going to come up on the screen for us to kind of interject. I'm going to invite you all to do this, throughout, because again, this panel, you won't get them all together like this. No, this is very, very unique. So, so let's get started with our changing tech. And we're going to focus Tracy, Doug, and Britton on that tech. And I would like to just kind of go back to what's happened in this last year or so. The fact that Bloomberg Law, they did a legal tech survey about this last year and said that 54% of legal leaders are now open to using technology compared to a whopping 40% prior to the pandemic. So Tracy, I wondered if you could share your sort of special perspective on this, on what creative things happened within your firm, to make that crisis, have us all lean into technology.
Sure. And, some of my story may sound similar to others out there because I think law firms reacted remarkably when COVID first hit. It quickly became all about agility. I like to say everybody in IT became front desk, front help desk, front line, on the front lines always. But we, the first thing we did was push VPN to all of our desktops because the only people who had laptops were actually the lawyers and exempt staff. So we quickly realized we needed everybody to take everything home. So people literally put their workstations under their arms, sometimes monitors too, and headed out the door. And then we were quickly trying to figure out how do we keep this business connected, people connected to our clients, all of this as fast as possible. One of my favorite stories, we were not a Zoom shop before COVID hit. But within the first 2 weeks, my chairman had found the free version. I was inviting the management committee, all of us making the leadership decisions. We had the 45-minute free version. So after 45 minutes, you had to send a new link and start the whole thing again. So as fast as we could with the rest of the world, we were trying to get enterprise licensing for Zoom, and so we got that taken care of within probably the first 4 weeks. And then Zoom phones followed a little bit after because we were actually making cell phone calls right with our clients because we didn't actually have a phone system that could support it through any other mechanism. We were on an older system. So a couple of other things that we did, I'm not sure they don't feel as creative anymore as they did in the moment. I can tell you that. But on the operations side of the house, the first thing I did was create a weekly ops call with about 40 of our leaders, included the GC, chiefs, directors, managers, office managers, so that we could quickly share pain points and solve the business's problem as we moved through it. What I didn't realize about that meeting, we used Zoom, of course, it kind of became this invisible team builder. It was pretty incredible. People who had never seen each other before kind of met and then bonded and really interacted in a whole new way. With 40 people, you would think it'd be somewhat unmanageable, but it really wasn't. We actually ended up starting the meeting after a few weeks with a mindful minute because there was so much stress involved and doing some sort of mindful exercise with everybody. And then we would do a round robin to see how everyone was doing, which would include checking on how are your family and how are you and how is your team, and then what is the business problem that we should be talking about or trying to solve. And people really liked that. So we did that aspect of it. And I guess I would also just mention we created a program called Shadow Me. I don't know if anyone's heard of this one before, but we just found that the lawyers, as we moved through COVID, just were not as, I'm so sorry, just were not as, they weren't using the technology to the fullest extent, of course. And so we would get an IT person to shadow someone for a couple of hours, watch them work and make recommendations to how they could do things better. So that was really kind of a fun program that folks really liked.
Okay, so how about you, Doug? Tell us what the creative solutions you brought up during working remotely.
Well, I guess there are a couple things, and as I look to when we all decided to go work from home when we were planning to do it, I was actually in our London office that week, which gave me the added benefit that my workday started 6 hours before the workday here in the U.S. But a couple things, just that come to mind, just in general, and then more specific to your question, Sherry, is we have part of our business continuity plan. We have a global crisis management team, and that's composed of about a dozen people, myself included, headed by our managing partner who's based in London. And so we invoked that and ended up with daily meetings starting the first week in March of 20, whatever year it was, 20.
Every year.
It seems like yesterday. But so we invoked that, and that met and really sort of said, okay, what do we need to do? What do we need to do now? Like Tracy, we look to get people more mobile and more connected. We use both VPN and Citrix, and we had the technologies in place, so that was good. We just needed to, during the first couple of days, acquire additional licenses for like secure ID and things of that nature. So I think, and as we look to remote working, I think one of the changes is that pre-COVID, a lot of lawyers would say with regard to their secretary or personal assistant, he or she needs to be right outside my door. If we look back over the last 15 months, they haven't been right outside their door. We haven't been moving toward work teams and things of that nature, but which were pretty much locally based. But now those support teams are fully deployed, and we don't have a plan to bring many of them back on site there, with third parties or others. So that's something that's changed. Mm-hmm. Some things that we had to jump on were like many firms and many companies, if something isn't broke, why fix it? Well, our pre-bills were done manually, like in paper. In fact, we were just moving the week this happened. We were moving from one building to another in Chicago, and there was this huge 15 by 45 foot room with a big table in the middle that was designed for the billing team to sort of lay out all the pre-bills and stack them and distribute them and things of that nature. We moved back to office this past week in the US. That room's never been used, and it will never be used because we quickly realized we had to get pre-bills out. We didn't really have a good way to do it. And so with our developers and our billing team and such, we developed an automated pre-bill system in about 3.5 weeks and did that. So that was one of the things we really had to jump on. Another thing that we've been doing is about 3 months in or 2.5 months in, our managing partner created a workplace of the future task force. Not just work from home, but what does the workplace of the future look like? So there's been a number of us who've been involved in that, and that's how that's defined our future, where we are and where we're going. And it's still under definition. So
it's the strategies for going forward. This is really the conversation we're going to move into. So Britton, tell us about what creative aspects on your side you did.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that I have a very aggressive and forward-thinking IT team. We've been using Microsoft Teams since it was first introduced 5 years ago, so we didn't have to adapt to learning something new, and we were lucky that we also added Zoom 3 months prior to the start of the pandemic. So it was, having a talented organization, but also just being lucky at being in the right, making the right decisions. And so we both had Teams and Zoom, which helped us a lot. I think. When we transitioned to work from home, attorneys appreciated technology and the IT team more, but I didn't want to tell them, hey, we kind of already had this. We didn't have to adapt as much, other than, like Doug said, adding more licenses for Citrix. We had the capacity because of like BCDR programs that Doug mentioned, of adding, what happens and being prepared for that moment. And fortunately, having practiced that, we, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, but fortunately because we had practiced that prior, it was a more seamless transition. But it was a deeper, a lot of thankfulness from their attorneys. Like, hey, we just transitioned. We just literally closed all of our offices in a week, and we're all able to work from home. How did you do it? And I didn't want to say, hey, it wasn't that hard, but the accolades came, and we appreciate all of that. So a lot of the. And I'm fortunate to work for a very generous firm where, they reimburse for a lot of things that I'm not sure if it's, universal for a lot of firms. They did a work from home stipend so that people can buy furniture, chairs. They also have a biannual, technology stipend where attorneys can buy a tablet phone. They get reimbursed, and they already got reimbursed for, home internet, cell data, and plans, which I think are really generous compared to other firms I worked at. And all of our laptops are self-enabled, so they can just connect to Verizon if they lose internet or wherever they're traveling. So we were kind of prepared for kind of the remote work environment because mobility has been emphasized throughout the industry, already. And so we were building that model, and it was fortunate that we had these capabilities. I think some of the newer, creative technologies, working closely with my chief innovation officer, who's super, super talented and creative. I don't have that creativity, fortunately. So I kind of, lean on him to like, hey, what are the solutions? We have this challenge, but then, I look at it, okay, I'll implement your ideas. So, looking at Free Busy, a lot of requests from attorneys and staff, like, how do I know that my practice group or my client teams are busy? And so we created this, a simple dashboard developed internally to just, an attorney or an associate can say, I'm full, don't hand me any more work, or I have room. And so it was just a dashboard that the billing partner can see okay, there's 18 people on my team, there's 3 people that can accept work. So things, technology related to those type of Free Busy requests, whether it was staff and attorneys, was probably the most common request from our internal teams.
I'm just reminded of the adage about necessity is the mother of invention, right? And I feel like there were so many inventions through this. So I wanted to ask Tracy you a question as we transition into the next part of this conversation. You have a very unique perspective because you do you as CIO talk to you as the COO and like debate the
different hats, they put them on and off.
Yes, exactly.
Who do they know who they're talking to? The CIO Tracy or the CEO Tracy if somebody's coming up to you?
I do actually say that sometimes. Well, if you're asking this aspect of it, let me put the other hat on though and explain it this way.
But that's, I guess, kind of my question. So as you began to, we're planning obviously for this coming year and the things that we know need to persist and all of the things we need to budget for. Do you see that, going to leadership as a result of this incredible example of how technology can empower an individual and a whole firm? Do you see that there's more, more lenience in that or more agreement in that? Or is there still a lot of debate about technology?
Um, no, I don't think there's a lot of debate, and I think that the doors will continue to open wider and wider. I think 2021 was still sort of a, let's be cautious year, and so things still went forward, by the way, more so than in 2020, which when it became about surviving, or what was going to happen with this pandemic. So much uncertainty, nobody really knew. But now it's sort of, okay, how can we really use technology? They can see it in a whole new world of enablement. I can actually work from home, where before we had many that wouldn't. They just liked coming to the office and wanted to be in the office. But now they're thinking, this is a better life. I think I'd like to do a little bit of both, or 3 and 2 or 4 and 1, however they're going to figure it out as we move through, as all firms and businesses move through. What's that right balance of being in the office and outside the office? So I do think it was the year, or the 2 years almost now, for tech to shine and to really show how these businesses would never have been able to last without it. It's pretty incredible.
I would say, would you all agree that IT professional became visible in this and became, their knowledge got to shine and their ability to help you. I love that strategy you had of them watching over and kind of giving some guidance. That's just, again, very empowering to leverage this technology. So I think that's kind of where we're going to go ahead and transition into strategies for infrastructure and return to work. And Doug, I'm going to talk with you about this first, because what was it, just a week or two ago, your whole US office came back to work, and 3 weeks before that, London did?
Yeah, exactly. And we've gone to a global work from home policy of 2 days out of the office and the rest in. And some of us were doing work from home before then. But what was interesting is during one of the Workplace of the Future meetings, one of the senior people in our firm made the comment that, well, our work from home strategy policy used to be sort of set up to discourage people from working from home. And now it's sort of turned and flipped like everything else, in that our work from home policy is there to really sort of encourage people to have a, more of a work-life balance and such. But we came back to office in London about 3 weeks ago. Asia's pretty much been in most of the time. Brazil is in and out. And then in the US, all of our US offices a week ago Monday. And pardon me while I'm going to take a little bit of time here, Sherry, if you don't mind. I'll try to get through real quick, but I wanted to give you some feedback, direct feedback of what we've gotten from our experience. So I'm going to go through this real quick. Pardon my notes. Why we had an uptick in calls the first week, there wasn't really an avalanche of what we expected, primarily probably because of the prep work we did in offices. And part of that was over the last few months, we had techs come in, cycle on, cycle off, desktop PCs and such, to try to keep them up to date, so that people didn't come in and just get stuck. We also had users coming in and out of the office, so that helped with the transition. We had an increase in calls related to new webcams and headsets and speakers. One of the things we've been doing over the last couple of months is we deployed in all our offices desktop or webcams and headsets and speakers, so that when people came back, they would have something to use other than, we're all tired of the ceiling fan shot that people have when they look up. So, why isn't the video working? Well, you need to flip the cover up off the camera, things like that. Printers, we had a lot of people that were new hires and they had never been in the office. So our techs needed to walk them through connecting to a printer, and some came in to find new printers or things that they wanted. Problems with performance, a lot of it was just reviewing how-tos. Some keyboards just did not work, so they've been sitting around for a while. Phones, this was a common type of call. Again, many of these were how-tos, such as resetting passwords, changing call forwarding, because everybody had changed call forwarding to be out. Now it's in. Applications, some people, like I said, were reporting applications were too slow. All that was pretty much resolved once syncing completed. And so there was just the update syncing, but also in Outlook, you have your boxes that need to resync. So we could use Citrix in the office to help with that. How to log on desktop machines. We use BitLocker, and people forgot their code. Outlook Sync, I talked about that. PC updates. Sometimes, for the machines that our techs could not get to, sometimes they required a couple of restarts. Phones and voicemail. Everybody wanted their office phones to point and get back into. They wanted to go to their cell phones on the way out, and now on the way in, it's a different story. And a lot of it all comes down to assisting users with training and re-educating them on being back in the office. And I'm going to just take a moment here to recap something from our London office. When our London office came back in, our office managing partner, she wrote an email to the entire London office because everybody was coming back in and thought things would be magically done for them. And so there's about 8 bullet items here. I'll read 2. Everything seems to be being escalated as urgent and high priority. Please be thoughtful about what is really urgent. The IT team is very busy, and therefore please bear with us for non-urgent requests. Please use the service desk or help desk. But I love the first bullet item, and I saved the best for last. So, because we deployed a lot of laptops during this time, and I'll talk about it later. We went to a laptops first policy. That's new news. But so this was the best. A lot of people have been, quote unquote, forgetting their laptops and demanding immediate replacements when they get to the office. I am not sure when you're coming into the office how you could forget your laptop. But if you do, obviously, that's your responsibility. Either go home and collect it, or you will need to be patient while IT try to help. It is not a priority for them to manage people's forgetfulness.
Oh my. Okay. That's an interesting last line. So Britton, on your side, you had some sort of strategic focus for your technology moving forward. It all kind of relating to collaboration tools. And I was hoping you could comment a little bit about that, whether that was during the pandemic or if that is, your whole kind of focus going ahead.
Yeah, a couple notes. Like Doug had noted, we changed our model. I think we modeled after like retail, actually, because we introduced shipping to people's homes. We introduced curbside pickup for equipment. It's kind of crazy that we mimicked the retail model, and all of our laptops have in-home support, so they can just call the support at Lenovo and they'll get it fixed if they want it. Anybody come into their home right now. And with collaboration, we're really looking at, open spaces. We're doing about 3 build outs right now. One in our Northern California office, our DC office, and we have a couple coming in for next year. And I know my COO is talking to different architects, different firm leaders. What's the new space going to look like? Are there more huddle spaces? Is there more common spaces? And so we're adjusting to that type of model where there might be people coming in on specific days of the week or a couple days of the week, whether it's a practice group. I know like our corporate team in LA comes in on, I believe, Tuesdays, just so that they're all in the same day. And they might be coming in more than one day, but at least they're coming in so that they can collaborate and not everybody come in when they want. And they might be coming in not seeing the people that they really want. So the other part is really, I think a lot of firms are kind of grappling with this, is the collaboration tools that are out there. So you have Zoom, you have Teams, you have WebEx, you have Ring Central. And how do you make it work? Because these providers aren't making it easy. They don't communicate well together. And so building out these huddle rooms, we're looking at making technology agnostic. So, right now, if you can create a Zoom room, you can create a Teams room, but what happens 2 years from now when one product might be more dominant than another? And so, we've introduced kind of flexibility. We use a product called Crestron Flex, so that people, if it's not a Zoom room and they need to connect to a Google Meet or other, they can just bring their laptop and it'll work off the existing infrastructure. So it is really trying to solve what I believe the technology providers should be really solving, but they're in for market share and things like that. So, Zoom and Teams and others are just, fighting in the same space. And so they're not going to make it easy on us. So
So, Britton, you also have a strategy that Doug mentioned the laptops first on his side, but you're working on something kind of innovative as well going forward that has to do with working in iPads.
Yeah, so we are getting more frequent requests from attorneys, especially partners, about, hey, kind of like what Doug talked about, where they're doing their e-billing or pre-billing. So we kind of moved away from paper e-billing a couple of years ago, and so we tried to mimic that process. And again, this is working very closely with our chief innovation officer. Billing partners are used to writing on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So how do we introduce a product off an iPad that's exact same process? We're not changing their process. We're just changing the platform. And so we provide our billing attorneys with iPad Pros. They can mark up the bills, email it, and send it in. It goes to our accounting team. And so we've kind of introduced that a couple of years ago. And so I'd say about 200 or 300 of our billing partners already have iPad Pros. Being very intelligent people, they're like, how can I use my iPad that you've already provided me in addition to laptop? And how do I move more services to the iPad? So we have, focused on mobility. We had a couple partners that just returned their laptop and said, I don't need this anymore. I'm working off my iPad. So it's really rethinking, how best to work efficiently from a remote workspace or wherever they might be. We don't know where they are at any given time, except for we get alerts sometimes that they're in a foreign country that they're trying to log in from the InfoSec alerts. But, we don't know where they really are. I could be talking to a partner and they might be in their, different residence or mobile. So, we want to make it as simple as possible wherever they might be to work. So whether it's an iPad, whether it's a laptop, I've been trying to, I think when I talked to you yesterday, I've been trying to make the MacBooks work off the new chipset that's faster than any Intel chipset, and just haven't had success. But that's probably the next brainstorm, if I can get the other legal vendors to work on a Mac platform properly. So.
Cool.
If I could just interject, what's interesting to me in this conversation is, we think about what it was like before the pandemic, and then the huge challenge of suddenly moving an entire workforce to remote working. And a lot of people have been thinking, oh, great, the pandemic's going to end. And, we've done the biggest challenge. And I think what everyone is experiencing now is, oh, we haven't really faced the biggest challenge yet, which is the hybrid environment. And so I know in my role with ILTA, we were used to doing the live events. And when we had to do ILTA On, which was totally online, we thought that's the hardest thing we'll ever have to do. And then, we came to 2021 and had to do a hybrid conference and found, wow, there's nothing harder than that. And I think with our looking to return to the office, return to work, whatever you call it, I think firms are facing that same issue themselves, because we know how to work totally remotely. We know how to work totally in the office. What do we do now? Do we equip people with both laptops and a full setup at work to avoid the issue of people forgetting to bring their laptops in? How do you make meetings fair when some people are there physically and others are coming in through Zoom? How do you sustain a culture where it's, people are not necessarily in the office all at the same time? And so I think we're all realizing that the bigger challenges and the bigger uncertainties are the ones we're about to face, not the ones that are behind us.
Exactly.
The workplace of the future is definitely the bigger challenge, like you're mentioning. And it's not only the workplace internally, but it's the workplace with our clients who are, experience a lot of the same things. One of the things that we've really started to focus on when we start thinking about the workplace of the future is workflow. and workflow technologies, but it's not just technologies, it's people too. But if you think about workflow many times was taking a memo down the hall a couple doors and handing it to somebody to review. That was workflow. And now our workflow is all up in the sky.
And I think it's interesting because Tracy was also saying, Doug, about all the different offices that you have, and that there's a kind of uniqueness about each one, whether people are always in the office or whether they prefer to not be there, and how this is impacting you in the other hat for real estate.
Right. Absolutely. And with leases coming up, how do you make the decision that says, before it's every attorney gets an office, usually window lined. And now it's, do you really still go down that road? Do you get an agreement from the lawyers that say, okay, 3 days a week or more, and you can have an office? Otherwise, we don't know. I mean, I think that's what all law firms are now going to be faced with the real estate aspect, because I've been in and out of all these offices during the last 2 years, and most, because of COVID, have been empty, except for the one-offs here and there where everyone kept going in, it didn't matter. But it's going to be a real challenge. We also opened 4 offices during COVID, and we put them in Regis space because we weren't sure how large they were going to be. We had just brought new attorneys on. Were they going to be 10? Were they going to be 5? And so we thought, well, since most people are working from home anyway, let's give them a place to go, and then we'll figure out what to do. And so we're now having some really interesting decisions, like in our New Orleans office, we are actually going to have flex space in there that mirrors some of what they experienced in the select shops, which had some more collaborative workspaces like you see with co-working when you go into some of those co-working areas. And we're going to have the regular traditional aspects too. So a little bit of both mixed in to really make it an interesting work area.
And I think you all are planning, greater movement to the cloud, which was already in progress for most of you. But this is where we're actually going to transition now to hearing from Matt, Ginevra, Leigh, and Sandee about basically the changing tools of the trade, the changing and new tools of the trade. And so I wanted to get started by having you, Sandee, talk a little bit about your organization, first of all, and then share with our audience how, you're preparing talent to empower other talent through use of some special projects, and how that ties to what we're all doing here in legal.
Awesome. Great. So first of all, I think, Doug, your comment should be a bumper sticker. Just saying that. So, icStars, we're a technology, leadership, and business training organization for underserved and underrepresented folks in Chicago, Milwaukee, soon to be Kansas City, and Columbus, Ohio. And so in a nutshell, we find talent, we train talent, and put talent to work in IT careers. But I think what makes it really special is that it's not just technology training, where it's sort of anchored in systems thinking. And so we look at systems thinking and all the great process and methodology that's embedded in doing technology work. And that's where we focus our training on. So, of course, people learn how to be developers, programmers, but also that same anchor of systems thinking helps us to develop community leaders. So at the end of the day, IT is about solving problems and building solutions. We're teaching that. Also, how do we solve problems and build solutions that our communities face every day? And so to kind of bring those ends together, technology and leadership, we really work on building a community of technology leaders and community leaders to surround our students, our interns with, as mentors and coaches and leaders, et cetera. And so how we do this is we do a project-based learning environment. So every cohort of 20 people is given a business problem from a CIO. And that organization sponsors the project. And the team, the cohort is divided up into 4 teams. They form their own consulting companies, and then they're competing with each other for this RFP. And it is a blast. So, the software that they build is absolutely real, but we script learning objectives, the leadership objectives, through the project and through the client. So for example, their second client meeting, the teams are showing up to like go over some user stories with their client, and all of a sudden a fight will break out between technology and business, like that ever happens, right? And the teams have to decide, okay, what do we do? Do we mediate or moderate or just let the loudest person win because we don't even know, you know? And so they're learning to be consultative, and that our learning is that after that meeting, the program manager kind of takes them to the whiteboard and says, okay, did you build trust and credibility with your client today? Did you defend your client? And then, you know, on trust and credibility, every team will sort of put them, chart where they are on that 2x2 and kind of plan for the next time. So I share all that with you to say, like, this is our model of learning, but it's also how we engage the community. And so, you know, one of our project sponsors was Andy Jersick over at Seyfarth and Shaw. And the project was a voter app for the partners at his firm. And so our students made this voter app, and it was really exciting. And kind of the problem that he wanted to solve was sort of moving the partners from paper to technology. And this was, you know, a little while ago, but not that long ago. And so what better than to have a group of 20-year-olds kind of competing with different solutions, very creative, very, you know, practical solutions. But what it ended up being is a tremendous opportunity to be an employer of choice for their team. So all of a sudden, this team of high potential technology folks was like, sure, I'll sign up for this fun project with icStars. And then they end up getting reinvigorated, re-inspired, you know, by working with young people and actually acting out some of the worst behavior they've ever experienced inside of a learning simulation. So a ton of fun, but a really important part of learning and doing is actually building your social capital, meeting with people and trying things out in a quote unquote safe environment. And so you know, Sherry wanted me to share that because I think it's such a powerful way that we sort of bring communities together and value in that.
Sandee, thank you. The session that was one before ours, there was a gentleman on the panel who talked about teamwork, and he said that, you know, more time for teamwork is the future way of all of us working. And I wanted you to share that story because how do you do that, right? How do you sort of develop the talent to recognize that when, frankly, it's not really been like that, right? And so I think it's just such a great example of some of those inspired ideas that we can all have. Ginevra, to your point about, you know, what's so hard, what all the hard things are that we have to do ahead. I wanted to take this next to Matt because Matt, by the way, first of all, I am sorry, Tracy, I forgot to mention in your introduction that we have royalty on this call. That is Tracy, because the Society of Information Management just named her CIO Plus, a CIO who took on additional responsibility, CIO Plus of the year. And then we have Matt, who is an author of a book called The Human Cloud. And equally, you have a blog post, a podcast. So media mogul here as well. So, so Matt, I wanted you to talk a little bit about, you know, your what you've shared about AI and about how, like Sandee's, you know, projects, these are missions for good, and that these are things which, by the way, are, yes, powerful and empowering lawyers, but will it just erase lawyers? And how do you communicate around all of that?
Sure. Yeah. Yes. And before we jump on all that, I wanted to add, Sandee, that the kind of work that you're doing and building more, I'd say, core skills in IT professionals is absolutely essential, because we've all seen, and I've seen it in my journey, my career, we're in this big shift from what was traditionally more of a back office infrastructure kind of role for technology, and not that that was absolutely necessary, but we're pivoting more and more into being business enablers and strategic partners of the business. And that is a different set of skills that some of us have had to either sort of learn through osmosis, or we're sort of fortunate enough to have that background to begin with. But more and more, we need that in everybody. We need that in every IT professional, as opposed to just the one or two people we hire specifically for that. So I applaud the work that you're doing, and look forward to hearing more. So jumping, I mean, one of the things that I have seen through the course, and I've been in the AI and machine learning space for far too long, probably decades at this point, is similarly what used to be something that was very, very complicated, expensive, really reserved for only the handful of largest companies and use cases, and this is no surprise, it's becoming much, much more accessible. It's becoming much, much more approachable, less expensive, easier to manage, easier to use, and it's getting integrated into everything that we use, and sort of refer to it as everyday AI. And that's everything from, I saw an article today that cash flow prediction will grow 450% in the next few years due to machine learning, and so it's everywhere. It's everywhere. When it comes to the lawyers, we all know of the traditional use cases, with e-discovery being the first one that really brought machine learning and artificial intelligence into the mainstream, and certainly legal research. We're seeing it now with contract management over the last few years, for sure. But I'm seeing it even in areas like language analysis and translation, seeing it in areas that our clients as law firms have been doing for some time, but law firms are starting to express an interest, like patent landscape analysis, looking at trends and clusters of work and using that to help build a strategy with clients. Those are things that lawyers didn't necessarily do 5-10 years ago. So really, it's starting to permeate all of the different things that we use in lots of different ways. And I know that's not, that's probably stating the obvious, but it's accelerating, and we're seeing it in everything from the practice of law to some of the business of law. And even my predecessor here sent an article over the other day that talked about using emotion and facial recognition sentiment analysis to build better engagement on virtual meetings like this. And that they have law firms as clients. So we're seeing this permeate a lot of what we do.
Awesome. So thank you, Matt. I want to jet in a question that came in. If that's okay, Madeline, you can go ahead and post it. This question is for any one of you. How do we secure our data with most of the services moving to the cloud-based platform nowadays? Anyone want to take that one?
I'll start, and then I'll let others jump in as well. I moved my prior firm to the cloud a decade ago. So the cloud is not new, and it wasn't new even a decade ago. But it really comes down to due diligence. You have to do your due diligence. A lot of cloud structures are actually more secure than what you can do internally. I know everybody said that for years, but a lot of people don't believe it, but it's kind of true. But it needs to come down to due diligence and how you structure things, but I'll let others answer as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I agree with what Doug said. We've had a cloud-first strategy for a while, and I remember when people were first talking about moving to the cloud, and lawyers were very skeptical. Someone said something so intelligent to me that it convinced me, and to this day, I think it really rings true, which is these companies, this is what they do, right? They create these products, and if they're not secure, that's it for them, right? That is not what we do. We are not IT people. We don't, it's very arrogant for us to think that we would be able to secure that digital content better than a company focused on that. And that really rang true to me, especially when I consider things like how bad people were at protecting their paper, and how you constantly had to remind people, don't say things in the elevator. You forget these are human beings who are not thinking security 24 hours a day, but these tech companies are.
I'm going to have a slightly different view on that because I don't want to make a blanket statement that some of these cloud vendors, you got to really, like a couple of people said, that you got to do your due diligence. Some of these cloud providers have moved their, third-party programmers to Eastern European countries without telling us. So I don't want to make it universal that, the cloud vendors are doing a better job. I see some of the smaller law firms moving to cloud because they just can't retain InfoSec staff. I mean, even here in LA, the 100, 200 attorney firms, I've had multiple conversations with the CIO IT director. Like, I just hired somebody. I already lost them 6 months later. Do we move to an MSSP service, or do I try to actually make an effort to retain InfoSec? And probably for those, it makes sense to move those outside. One of the reasons we moved to NetDocs is because their information security was years ahead of what we could, and like you're saying, Ginevra, what we could provide. But for the other services that have moved to cloud, whether it's Box, Dropbox, or others, if you were lucky to have an information security or information governance team, implementing CASB, which is like Cloud Access Security Broker, and Microsoft has compliance centers. So properly using the tools, once you've opened it up to understand what data is going in and out of those services, I think is critical. And a lot of our law firms, our information security audits gone from 10 years ago when I was answering those from like 30 or 40 a year. Now we're doing 300-400 a year. So, our clients are keeping us honest in terms of what we're doing and what controls we're putting in place. So I think that is the only other point I want is to, if we're lucky to have an information security team, to implement an HSM. So, like Microsoft, they can release our data to government entities without telling us in some cases. So if you have an HSM or customer lockbox, I urge law firms to implement services like that where you're in control of the data, even though it's in the cloud. So.
Yeah, you want your keys.
Yeah. And the last thing I would just add is, and I echo what Doug and Britton said for sure, that our GC goes through every single one of those contracts, and it's a business, associate agreement, and you got to make sure. Sometimes we'll put our security addendums on top of it, and we go back and forth a lot with the lawyers on it. There's almost no agreement that doesn't go back and forth with the lawyers.
So Tracy, there's actually a question we're queuing up that was asked for you.
Yeah, so this is a great question, and I'm laughing because I had the New Orleans group convinced that we could put one of these ping pong tables that would flip, so the top could be a war room table if you needed it, and then flip it over. You could have some fun, and right up until we made the order, and then they backed out. So we do talk about it, and so at some point we'll probably get something like that will happen in our downtown LA office when we build out. The multi-purpose room, it's a smaller, it's only like, I think 20,000 square feet there. We made sure it could be also a yoga room and things like that. So when you're making sure your furniture is in and modular. And then the other thing we have done in any office who wants is we put a keg in as well, because it is a gathering place and it is where people can, pre-COVID right nowadays, and before we had to turn them all off because of COVID. But that would obviously, after work, folks would get together and hang out and have a beer. Yeah.
Doesn't the keg come with the buildings in Chicago? It's just a friendly city. So I think it comes pre-built in the building.
Yeah, we don't have a keg in our building, but the building the admin team moved to just last year. There's a bowling alley downstairs. 2 bowling lanes.
Awesome. Okay, so we had one other question that I wanted to get to, and then we're going to go to Ginevra and Leigh. So this one is from Mark about, isn't it time to finally kill unsecure, unencrypted client emails? Speak on the operational and ethical argument to move to secure client portals to facilitate and house all client communication. Thanks. Who wants to take that?
Well, that's not a technology question. That is a behavior question. And it's not up to the law firms. Clients, if they would move off the email and use portals, that would be great. What we have found is most of the portals, typically they get used for just consuming information. The collaboration part hasn't really caught on. With some clients it has, but not as much as you'd expect. So it would be great to be able to just collaborate seamlessly through these portals, but it's going to take a while to wean clients and everybody off of email. We're just so used to it. It will happen, just like we were weaned off the phone onto email, but it will take time.
We've had some success actually offering an easy web form intake for clients to communicate with us. Some of the teams that had a great volume of email activity and needed a better way to get their arms around that came to us looking for a solution. And we went to this secure web form option, which allows on the back end the team to have a workspace with all of the information that they need to see, but the front end is just a slick, easy form for the client.
Nice. So Ginevra, we're going to go ahead and queue you up, because one of the interesting things that you shared with us as we prepared for this is that you had been for a while trying to explain what exactly does knowledge management and innovation, like what does it do for, the firm? And you were having to sell it and always call people and explain it. But there's something that has happened through all of this. And I was hoping you could share that with our audience today.
Yeah, I've been around a long time, longer than I'd care to admit. And I did start out as a practicing lawyer, which is relevant, I think, to the comments I'm going to make. And then I, after practicing for a while, moved into innovation, knowledge management, legal technology, and have been doing that for 20 plus years. In that time, so much of it, until very recently, has been around adoption, promotion. Even after you get people to adopt, you have to be constantly promoting so that you have persistence. You don't have people forgetting and going back to their old ways. And change management was like a huge part of it. Also, just justifying your existence. So, you talk about the back office and the front office, and that was a very real and painful concept, I think, for the longest time. What's happened now is a real shift. And I have to say, it was starting before the pandemic hit. But like many things that started before the pandemic, it really escalated and hastened the process. So typically, IT people, people in information services, people who were in non-practicing lawyer roles even, there was a real hierarchy within the law firm. And there, a tension of sort of an us and them feeling. And what's happened, I think, and what's been hastened by the pandemic is there is no back office anymore. There's one office, and we're all in the front, and we're serving clients, and we're just all serving our firm's clients in different ways. So what I do for the client differs from what the lawyers who are practicing do, which differs from what our IT team does. But all of us are bringing different skills that allow us to deliver that service to the client. And what I'm finding is, first of all, what's most gratifying is we're not out selling our services to the lawyers anymore. They're coming to us. And we have a new problem, and it's a great problem. We can't keep up with demand. That is really new for us. And we are really struggling to keep up with not only the lawyers coming to us and saying, oh my God, I need you to help me solve this problem, but their clients are coming to them and asking them to solve their non-legal problems. And we're being brought in as experts in our field to actually build and produce, for example, custom solutions for a client. And it started where we were doing the legal side of it and the technology side of it, or, you know, the custom build side of it. Now we're actually working on projects for certain clients where the lawyer has no involvement. So it's a corporate law department. They know the law. They just want us to do the non-law side of it. And that's really exciting. It's making us part of revenue generation. And I loved what Sandee was saying, because it is so true. On these kinds of projects, the technology people often are the most important person in the room leading the project, and they do need leadership skills, and they do need superior communication skills, and they do need negotiation skills, you know, being able to say, well, you want that, but wouldn't it be better if we gave you this? And so what you're doing is great, because I'm finding that the people on my team who come from these different various backgrounds really are equipped to sell our services, express their skills, and work together to create great solutions for our clients. And I think the thing that's most gratifying, and then I'll shut up, is I think it really is breaking down that hierarchy where every member of a project team is equally valued. And like I said, sometimes the lawyer has no part to play, and they're fine with that, because it's all about meeting your client's needs.
And strengthening that relationship. And I know, Leigh, this is exactly where I loved your comment about the client facing versus the, you know, non-client facing work that you did. And Leigh has had a similar transition, Ginevra, to the same scenario. So Leigh, can you share with us about what you've been doing in your group?
Absolutely. So when I joined Incubator a couple of years ago, we were predominantly internal, and occasionally we would engage with clients. Now, for my role in particular, although there's a broader team of other attorneys and technologists, I'm really about 80% client facing. And it comes down to, as Ginevra was saying, the comfort with our knowledge base or trust, right? So if you think about going out to select a solution in a market that's getting very crowded, how do you know what you need? You really don't if you haven't experienced those technologies before. So you might be likely to go with what your neighbor is using that you heard about, and that may not be the best thing for your practice. It may not be the best thing for the business. So it's a broader conversation that needs to occur to really pull in the attorneys or the client, if you're working with a client directly, and help them understand the journey that they need to be on to get to the right desired end state. A lot of times we have to shift the conversation from a request for a solution or an inquiry about a solution to a conversation about how we might reach an objective, like how might we drive efficiency. and really start to brainstorm more around the potential options for solutions, even beyond technology, which helps us better define the problem.
Leigh, thank you. And this is sort of where I want to marry up Sandee, Britton, and Matt on kind of as we're transitioning this final part of the conversation, which is the changing and tech-empowered lawyer, right? The fact that we have these IT professionals, if you will, working. Ginevra, I loved what you said about we're all working for the client, just in different ways, and delivering that client service. And so Sandee and Matt and Britton, we've all kind of talked about what exactly are those skills that, you know, we need to develop and that we need to broaden more across our firm and our teams. And I know, Sandee, you have, and I have talked a little bit about some of that, and it has to do with, I don't know, diversity. It has to do with all these broadened perspectives that Leigh spoke about, and Ginevra spoke about, and Tracy spoke about, and Doug, and all of you. And how do we bring diversity into this, and how do we build it? You can go ahead and get started.
Yeah, it's so important, right? Like that, especially in technology, right? Because the more diversity we have, the better our solutions, and the more capabilities that we have. So I'm going to wave my diversity flag and say it is essential. Everybody needs to invest in diversity, and there are great ways to do it with organizations like ours. So, icStars is not the only person or not the only organization doing technology training. There's Year Up, there's Genesis Works, there's Perscolis, and all of us are sort of in this industry to develop that next generation of technology leaders. But I think, we've also got the boot camps, we've got the universities, we've got all of these ways to find great talent. But I think that when you are looking at socioeconomic diversity, in addition to racial and gender and all of those things, what folks who have been underserved are bringing to the table is a level of resiliency that their counterparts might not have. And so from facing adversity, a lifetime of adversity, you develop resiliency. And think about it like a toolkit. That inside of that toolkit are critical thinking skills and creativity and reciprocity and chutzpah. It's all there. And we just need to provide a context for them to unpack that. And I think that that's what happens when you connect with organizations like icStars to bring on talent, or to have a volunteer project, or to sponsor and engage with at the board level. Because there's so many things that we can provide from the diversity perspective that will enable, the business, and that makes for great technologists. So yeah.
That empower great lawyers. And Ginevra, I was just thinking, like, I'm going to play matchmaker here, but like your backlog, I think maybe Sandee might have an idea for you. And Britton, recently you shared with me that you just joined a mentoring program.
Yeah, I'm so envious of what Sandee has accomplished. I didn't even know about it until very recently, and I reached out to icStars, like, how do we open one up in Los Angeles? And I saw that you opened one up in Chicago and Milwaukee, and I was just actually reading an article. I'm a huge sports fan, but what caught me is Aaron Gordon has Code Orlando. He started. So I've never read about him, but when I started reading that he and his mom started a foundation in Orlando to teach minorities and women, starting from the grassroots, from high school. I read a 5-page article and never even, I'm a big fan, but I've never even read about him until that article. I saw that he started a foundation, Code Orlando. And I've talked to the recruiters because diversity is something that's really important to me, and I'm trying to increase diversity. But when I get resumes, out of probably 40 or 50 resumes, I might get to, that are women candidates. And so I talked to many recruiters in SoCal and also others that are not in SoCal. What's the issue? And it's the pipeline. So I think part of it is what Sandee's doing, start getting people interested in technology, whether it's application development or cybersecurity or whatever the technology, get them interested at a younger age, get them sponsorship, so that there's people that are interested in their progression in their career. I think that's the only way to tackle. I mean, we have 500,000 cybersecurity jobs open, and somehow we can't fill it because people are not moving into that field. And I don't even know about the openings in IT because I've just been more focused on the cybersecurity job openings and how do we fulfill those, because there is a big glaring hole on that side in addition to technology. So I'm so envious of what Sandee has created. I'm interested in how do you expand to more cities in the US, and if I can help in any way, I'd be very interested.
Well, thank you.
I think that I'd like to just jump in here if I could, please, Sherry.
Yes,
At one
absolutely.
point, I was part of a change leadership team for an HR company. They had a great metrics tool that showed us that diversity tended to be in pockets across certain job roles. And so one thing I'm a big proponent of is having diversity just in the voices in the room and the role types in the room when you're vetting and selecting technology, which is what I primarily work with. But I think that if we do a better job internally in our own organizations and in our cooperative initiatives where we're engaging with clients to pull in folks from various different role types, that will also naturally increase that community exposure that Sandee is discussing with us today.
And then I have the other topic too, which again just sort of fills in, right, the whole picture. And that, Matt, is what you and I have talked about some of the skills that we know our organizations need, existing personnel, and building that understanding and broader perspective that can make better technology decisions, better service to clients. And so we talked a little bit about some of the things you had ideas on. One was I think it was like a contract, or maybe it was a list of skills you wish to see developed in your legal teams.
Yes. And piggybacking off of what Sandee and Leigh just shared, I'm seeing this as well, and it's brilliant to see. I'm optimistic, but I can't wait for it to happen quicker because we need this right now. But I've been heartened by I had conversations with a local university and local high school system just this past week, and seeing the energy and talent and willingness to be multidisciplinary. It is leaps and bounds above when, dating myself, when I went to school, it was not like that. And so I'm really encouraged by what we're seeing, but we need those folks in the workforce now. So it's great to see. When I think about the skills, Sherry, what we used to call soft skills, which I hate that term. I call them core skills now because soft makes it sound soft. No, it's core. These are core to what we need, and they're universal. So Sandee, the same kind of things that you were talking about with building resilience and communication, empathy, and teamwork, and task management, and project management, we need folks within IT to level up to that. But Sherry, what we were talking about is it's a universal skill. So we do need our lawyers to also level up in those areas. And it is encouraging, I think, this shift and the move to a future of work is starting to realize that those skills are more important in the law firm. And we've been saying this for decades, but it's just now, I think, starting to really come to the surface with topics of diversity and inclusion and how we build more resilient and strong teams. So I think the thing that, and we had talked about, is technology absolutely is becoming one of those core skills. I don't know of any area anymore that anyone can say, I don't need that. And so we do need to find a way of meeting in the middle where we as technologists need to be more accessible, understand the business more, be willing to say yes, and sort of move to the middle. But we need our lawyers to sort of sign that other side of the contract to say, we're willing to learn, we're willing to come to you and ask. And we're seeing more and more of that, which is encouraging. We needed to move up. But yeah, I will tell you, I've still seen, a couple of years ago, heard partners say, well, I don't need to do that. If you're the technology people, you go figure out. I don't need to know how to start a virtual meeting. I don't know how to do that. Just go do it for me. That doesn't cut it anymore. And their clients, again, aren't going to accept that as an answer anymore. So it absolutely that contract, that agreement that we're willing to help, but we need them to own technology as a core skill is essential.
I want to pick up on something Sandee said, though, that I think is really important. She was, I believe, talking about the socioeconomic differences and, you know, having skills like chutzpah and things like that. I think the problem is a lot of people have these skills, but they turn them off when they walk into a law firm if they're not one of the lawyers. And so I think what's really important to break that socioeconomic barrier is exposure. And so I was involved in a program that I thought was fantastic, where we would go to the high schools, groups of lawyers, and we would just do activities with them that were somewhat related to law. But it was for them to get to know lawyers as people. And then we would also, they would come down to the big law offices in Toronto, just so that they would get comfortable in that environment and not self-select out of it. Because that's a big part of not having the pipeline. People assume I'll never get in there. And so it's that exposure that makes people more comfortable with each other.
Thank you, Ginevra. And Tracy, may I ask you, when you were speaking earlier about the you know, just how your technology team, you know, stepped up and really did start working alongside the lawyers in their endeavors. I'm just curious your thoughts about what Matt and Ginevra and Sandee and Leigh have said, because how do you embed that talent? How do you persist that talent? And how are the lawyers responding? That's really the key question.
Well, so I think what we've all noticed, right, and watched through this COVID, there was some magic that got created in law firms, and that was that lawyers finally accepted technology, right? They stopped resisting it. They got engaged. They stopped trying to make someone else go start their Zoom phone call or whatever. They had to learn how to do it themselves, right? So I think they got curious too with technology, and I think they realized the connection that can happen with it. Right. So important through this. This was the big lesson, I think, that we all got to learn, that we can connect in more ways than just in person, although that is the best and a great way to do it. But then it was phones or it was WebEx. But now this is as close as we can get. And it's good. Now I can also connect with my clients this way, you know, and it does establish a different kind of bond. So I think it got to a point where we're enhancing, you know, any kind of interaction now with technology, and it's become a partnership with technology, and because they needed to learn it that way finally, you know, and not resist anymore. That's my point. But Doug, I see if you want to.
I was going to say, yeah, Doug, you what are your thoughts on this? You have always empowered your IT teams. You've always continued their learning and their education and their exposure to things. And you said something about an initiative around your IT team. I think you showed me a mouse pad with a phraseology on it that
I've got it in front of me.
A prop. He has a prop. I knew it.
I have a prop. Before I show you the prop, just going back to the first part of the topic with laptops first policy, and Tracy was talking about people carrying PCs out the door and stuff like that. We started a laptops first policy a year ago, and we'll get through like in 2023 with the refresh cycle. But it's not just for lawyers. Lawyers had laptops, but it's for our business professionals, because that was the one thing we had. We didn't have the ability to pick up and go. So we're giving everybody laptops so that people can pick up and go. And also it supports our new work from home policy of 2 days a week for everybody globally. So if you don't have If a secretary doesn't have the ability to pick up and go, how can you say you've given them a work from home policy? But going back to what you were asking, Tracy, Sherry, one of the things that I've done for this firm and my last firm is brand IT. We've talked about being the back door, the front door, but one of the things that, who are we? And at Mayor Brown, our brand is Evolve Mayor Brown Technology. And just prior to COVID hitting, I was just getting ready to start a new program, which Sherry was referring to. And I just, in fact, at a town hall, global IT town hall last week, re-energized it. Since I joined, I've always, this is, I guess, one of my favorite sayings, whether I meant it to be or not, is challenge the status quo. How many times have we been in a company, a firm, or whatever, and the response to something has been, well, we've always done it that way. Well, I don't care. Challenge the status quo. So we're starting this is within IT now. It's meant to be an internal program, but I challenge the status quo, where it's I for me or innovation, and shoot for the star. Challenge the status quo. So everybody has these mouse pads.
Fantastic. I think Sandee loved the touch of the star. That was awesome.
Love it.
Well, it's an asterisk, but that's what was on the keyboard.
So listen, we have just a few minutes, and I wanted to sort of wrap up by tossing each of you an opportunity to share your idea. And I'd love for our audience to join in through the comments too. But my question is, if we were to ask of our organizations, regardless of role, what would be the superpower you wish for them to bring to our new workspace in this coming year and the years beyond? But what are some of those things that you wish you would superpowers you wish you would see more of, or you would like to develop more of? And I'm going to just go back through the squares again. So Tracy, you're up first. So which superpower do you want to bring into your organization?
Well, I think I can only pick one. Agility is important. Doug, that laptop thing we did as well. And for Staff Appreciation Day, we also gave them the backpacks and mouse pads and everything so they could start going back and forth with it. But I think not being afraid of change, being agile, and intentional connection. I mean, I really can't say connection enough, I don't think.
So agility and connection, those are awesome. Sandee, how about you?
Yep, I love it. I love both of those, agility and connection. I also think on this diversity piece, it is so important, and that it's not just the diversity we bring in, it's the culture that we bring the diversity into that's going to have everything to do with retention, right? So, we are all culture captains in our organizations. And so I think taking a look at what currency are we using to inspire, to reward, to punish, to do all of those things, because that impacts the culture that everybody is working in.
Very well said. Thank you. Ginevra, how about you?
Well, I agree with everything that's been said so far. So I think by the end, we'll have a huge list of perfect superpowers. But I guess what I would add is to not embrace uncertainty, but really thrive in it and accept that uncertainty is life. And instead of confronting it or viewing it as a challenge, viewing all uncertainty as an opportunity. So that's the first one. And then, and this is something I've believed my whole life, and it hasn't changed. Curiosity. If you're a curious person, then you embrace diversity, you embrace uncertainty, you embrace change. It just opens everything up. So those are the two I think I would add.
So Leigh, this is great because Ginevra, she almost spoke the title of your article that I want everyone to read. And it was Technology Decisions in Times of Uncertainty. And I just thought, so perfect. So what are your superpower additions or broadening you'd like to see?
So I do love what Ginevra just shared, but I would add operational empathy. We are going through significant times of change. And if you're familiar at all with the Satir change model, it's chaos, right? Before it smooths out and we storm and form and norm. So right now we need to be patient with each other, and whether someone is coming to technology because they recognize they have to or because they are tech curious, regardless, we need to all support each other and have patience in that journey.
Britton, you're next.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything. Probably just as much as curiosity and the articulation of requirements.
Yes.
We have a lot of attorneys that we've introduced technology and they don't find it for a couple of years later, like, oh, we had this. And so, if we always struggle internally with how do we get the training out to the attorneys? Do we create shorter snippets they can see on an iPad, whether it's 2 or 4 minutes that they might be able to afford? Because if we offer a training, we might get 50% adoption in terms of coming to class or something. And this is before COVID. Now that we're remote and work hours are kind of gone, where people might be doing a 2-hour errand during the day, and so they're working until 10 and 11. So it's really the change management has changed, as well as how do we train our end users that might be disparate, where we used to be dependent on, oh, they're going to be in this office together same time. If we offer this training, we either in the classroom or go to their office, we're pretty we can hit most of them. But now with people coming in randomly days of the week, I think that's gotten harder.
Okay, thank you. So Matt, and we'll end up with Doug, and I'll say thank you to all. Go ahead.
All right. Thanks, Sherry. I had to, all was great and sort of took all of my answers. So I came up with one that I didn't think anybody else would. It riffs off a bit of the diversity discussion and how the diversity of inputs, and that is a very broad definition, how it enriches the team. I would add outside industry perspective. I'll say, for instance, I was in IT and management consulting. I worked for Deloitte. We did hybrid work 15 years ago. And it was, there's all sets of norms and practices that we just developed because most of us were on client sites. And then there were practice leads that were back in the office. Very similar approach. So yes, outside perspective, bringing that fresh blood in and being open to what those professionals have to offer, I think can add quite a bit into the profession.
Cool. Diversity of a tech perspective. So Doug, you get to wrap us up with the final superpower.
Okay, that's a wrap. Real quick, I think I would say communicate and participate if we're looking for attorney superpowers. And what I'm really getting at there, we do a lot of projects or attempt to do a lot of projects with practices and lawyers, and they're excited about it, and we all get partway through, and then they disappear. They get all too busy, and so we've all wasted a lot of time. So my one superpower would be the willingness to devote time to the projects.
Amen. You all, thank you.
Exclamation mark, and that's the end.
Thank you all so much for sharing how we can empower our lawyers with technology. And it takes this core set of skills to back them up to be able to then serve the clients in any way. So thank you all for sharing your time with us today.
And challenge the status quo.
Exactly. Thank you all.
Thank you.